And to have somebody call you out on it and be like, dude, what's going on? So,
and it's funny because I didn't even listen to your whole video that day.
Yeah.
Like, and you talked about that in there, right?
Yeah.
If you see people like that, reach out. I didn't even listen to that part. I saw just the first 2 seconds of it. I'm like, I need to make a phone call.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Grit Meets Growth podcast, where we bring you inspiration and insights focused on getting uncomfortable, making things happen, and creating a magnetic life. If you enjoy the messages you're hearing here, please leave us a review on whatever platform you're listening on, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes of the podcast. With that, let's get after it. Okay, let's dive into that. So we're back. It's episode 36. We're back. Chris and I having a conversation today. We've been having a conversation leading up to this, so it's good to dive into the episode. And I'm just going to dive into what we were just talking about. Actually, one of the things that happened over the last week was Chris reached out to me and he said, "Hey, like, what's going on? You seem tired. You seem like," you can probably say it better than I can, but you caught me in a spot where I was, I needed somebody. We talk about it all the time. I needed somebody to check in on me and like, how you doing?
Yeah. You had posted video, and I immediately only listened to the first couple seconds of it. And I immediately was like, something's off. And I made the call and I'm like, what the hell's going on, dude? You look like shit. What's the deal? And we talked through it. Obviously you're in a better place today than you were.
I'm smiling. It's, you know what it was, and you caught me at like the perfect time for this. Training for this backpacking trip I'm going to go on. We had some launch stuff we were doing at Orange Ball. I've got my kids going back to school. It was like life was chaotic, and I'm trying to get my workouts in to train for that trip. So I'm up on the hill at 5 o'clock in the morning, which means I'm out of bed a little after 4. And the thing that really hit, you made a comment to me in a text message, like, you need to take time to recharge. And we've talked about that. I've said sometimes everyone's got to recharge. You got to make time to recharge. But sometimes you got to eat your own dog food. And I wasn't taking time or making time to recharge. And my sleep patterns were off. I'm like, I can just grind through this. And it wasn't working. So you calling me out was a good tripwire.
Well, and a recharge is important on a couple of sides, right? So recharge is important to heal our bodies. Number one, but it also gives us an opportunity to reprioritize. And especially when all of that stuff is coming at you all at once, you feel like everything is a priority, which means nothing is a priority. Right? And when nothing is a priority, you feel like you're just in this spin and everything is chaotic and you're out of control.
And to be completely honest, that's exactly where I was. Everything was happening all at the same time. It was like being in a snow globe while somebody's holding it in their hand and shaking it. And it was a chaotic couple of weeks, just a lot going on. And here's the problem with it. It's all good stuff. Kids going back to school, good stuff. This new product that we're launching through Orange Ball, it's good stuff. It's exciting. Getting ready for this trip is exciting. But I was having a hard time prioritizing my time. And like I said, I was just trying to grind through. I'm like, I just got to keep grinding through, The 20-year-old version of me maybe could have let the sleep thing go. But when I'm getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning and I'm not going to bed until 10:30, sometimes 11, now that window of sleep and rest that I'm getting gets very small and very short. And it just wasn't enough. And maybe for a day, you can get away with that. Maybe for 2 days. And I hear people all the time, "Oh, I don't need much sleep." I gave up the sleep, and it started to, the ripple effect of that was mental and physical at the same time. I wasn't physically recharging to be able to perform well physically. But I also wasn't mentally in a good spot because I was just tired. So I went back after you reached out, and I went back and I looked at a couple of those latest videos, and I was like, I looked tired. So I took the weekend, recharged physically and mentally both, and kind of got back into it this week in a good spot. So,
and we're all dealing with that same thing, right? It's not anything, what you experience isn't anything new, right? It's what we're all experiencing. It's the way the world is today, right? We have so much stuff coming at us on a daily basis. That if we actually take the time to just stop and refocus and recharge, we can make a much bigger impact. Because spinning our wheels does nothing. It does nothing, right? You're drug out, you're tired, you're trying to make everything happen, and none of it's happening.
what
Take a step back, breathe, recollect your thoughts, refocus, recharge, and move on.
You know, the interesting part, and it's weird to share this, but I'll put it out there, is like, when you first sent the message, there was a moment where I was a little bit embarrassed, and I felt like a little bit of shame. Like, what, you can't handle it? Like, you're supposed to be able to hold this all together. You're supposed to be able to get through this, hold it all together. No one should notice when you're in the middle of chaos and you're not gripping it as tight as you think. And so there was an instant in there where I had to come to grips with the fact that I wasn't maybe holding it together as well as I wanted to. And people in my close circle could maybe see that. There's part of me that was probably trying really, and I'm not probably, that for sure was trying really hard to hide that I was in the chaos. Like, I got it. Hey, everybody, I got it. And sometimes you just have to be able to set things down. That was a real, over the last week, like, there's some things I had to set down. I had to reach out to friends. I had to tap back into some of the faith side. I had to like reconnect on a lot of different levels with a lot of different things to get back to a good place. So,
you know, a lot of what you're saying kind of feeds right back into really what we had talked about as a topic for today and some discussion. Do you want to kind of lay the groundwork on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we had Ben and Carly on our last episode, and even in the pre-call for that episode, Ben had brought up the fact that mindfulness is a warrior trait, and specifically with the samurai, mindfulness was part of their training. And that kind of piqued my interest. So I started digging into samurai a little bit, and there's tons of resources out there on samurai, and you can go back and watch Tom Cruise movies and like Last Samurai. I mean, there's this like warrior tradition behind the samurai. And I'm not gonna tell you that I understand the history of it or give you a history lesson in it. If you want to dig into that, you certainly can. But one of the things that, as I started to dig into it a little bit, that was interesting was this, the Bushido Code. And hopefully I'm pronouncing it right, but it's like the samurai code. And the interesting thing about that code was there's like 8 traits that the samurai trained in. And when you think about a warrior in training, as much as you think there's physical feats that they have to train for and physical activity and like combat and all those things, when you break down the samurai code, this Bushido code, there's a lot more to it than that. And so I'll run through some of the things that are included. There's 8 traits that are called out in the Bushido code, and we can dig into a couple of them, but like justice, courage, mercy, respect, honesty and integrity, honor, loyalty, and then character and self-control. And when you think about that list, as I was digging into it, there's so many good things on that list that kind of make up like the samurai code of conduct. This is how I'm going to show up every day. And it struck me a little bit. Two things struck me. First of all, the power of having like a personal code of conduct. This is who I am. This is how I'm going to show up all the time. These are the characteristics that make me who I am and that I want to try and achieve. But secondly, looking at this list, the things that are on this list, when you look at an elite warrior, these are not like battlefield things you would necessarily think would be on that list. So courage is one of those things that you maybe anticipate. Well, yeah, that's going to be on the list. When you dig a little bit deeper into how Bushido defines courage, it's more defined by your ability to decipher right and wrong, and then do what's right when it's not popular, when it's hard, that kind of thing.
Right. So when we talk about these 8 principles of the Bushido, they're all internally focused. They're all focused internally, but then acted upon externally. So, for instance, and it all starts with justice, right? That's the core value. And that's really about understanding what's fair and upholding the value of upstanding moral character. So moral character and fairness are the 2 components of that justice that form the foundation of it all. As you were mentioning, that courage piece then is deciphering then what is right and wrong, and not only perceiving that what is right or wrong, but acting upon it. Like courage requires you to act. Without the action, the courage doesn't exist. But then the third piece, which I think is really an important piece, is that of compassion. And that really goes back to what we were just talking about, right? Having that compassion, it's the ability to manifest love and sympathy through patience. But it requires that we see the world through other people's perspective. So it kind of ties back to EQ, right? That emotional intelligence component of the world today, right? Measure IQ and EQ. Compassion ties to EQ in the fact of I have to be able to understand what someone else is going through. And I can, as a leader in a leadership role, whether I'm directly their leader or just in their camp as a friend, I have to be able to see what is happening through their eyes and be able to help provide guidance to that. That is real compassion.
The best part about when you bring up leadership role, I think it's easy. If you're listening to this, you may have a very specific leadership role that you show up in at work, say. You might have, it might show up on your business card. Your job title says, I'm a leader, right? One of the things that's interesting is everyone is a leader. There is not, you exert influence over people in your life, whether it's at work, at home, your kids, your spouse, the team that you're alongside, your clients. Everybody has the ability to exert some level of influence on the people around them. And you're constantly making the decision, am I going to use that influence and that power in a positive way or a negative way? And compassion, I think, is what allows us to use it in a positive way, where, like, if you go back to that justice piece, one of the definitions of justice when we first started looking into this was to die when to die is right, and to strike when to strike is right. So there's a time to die and a time to sacrifice and step back. And there's a time to strike. And there's a time to like really activate as a warrior. And sometimes that is pretty intense, right? But tied into that is compassion in the middle of that, like knowing which is which. When is it time for me to step back and listen and just be there? And when is it time for me to act and get more aggressive? And finding the balance between the two can be really challenging, but it's very important as a leader.
Yeah. And the fourth component of that is respect. In order to collaborate with others, there has to be a level of respect deployed. And I think that respect starts with ourselves. If we don't respect ourselves, how can we respect others? And, respect in my eyes is a big thing that's wrong with the world today. There's a lack of respect that exists, not only for oneself, but definitely for others. And there's no way that we can acknowledge others' experiences and others' feelings if we don't have a level of respect as part of that.
And you hit on it. The self-respect is a big part of that. Sometimes it's easier to respect others than it is to respect ourselves, but there's that ability to dive in deep personally and say, okay, what do I respect about myself? That's a question that until I started digging into this list, I had not really asked that. What do I respect about myself? And you can take that a few different directions. Like, what am I proud of? Like, what about me makes me proud of me? But you gotta ask that question, because we're called to respect other people that enter our circle, but we have to have that core piece down first, and it's easy to miss that. And part of that, just to lean into that a little bit further, part of that is creating boundaries. A lot of self-respect is about boundaries. It's about knowing, like, okay, I'm okay to let this in, this person, this influence in, this is going to impact me this way. I'm not going to let this influence in because I respect myself, my space, and I don't have to. So.
But all of these principles all build upon each other, right? They start with those upstanding moral character, right? I have to have defined what is my moral character. If I don't have that, I can't have that self-respect for myself, right? I have to measure myself to that moral character, to that moral compass. Then I can start to understand the world around me. And how do I do that? I do that through integrity, right? I do that, which is number 5, that integrity. And in order to practice those first 4 things, I have to operate with integrity. I have to live honestly and sincerely in my own world for myself so that I can see that world around me through that lens.
When you throw honesty on the list, that was one when I first read through the list that I kind of breezed past, because it seems sometimes easy and sometimes expected. Like, I respect a level of honesty from the people around me. When I spent a little bit more time tossing that around, I realized that on the honesty side, we fold things and we twist things and we spin things, and we'll call it a little white lie, or like, I bent the truth a little bit. There's a lot of things that aren't 100% honest that we need to look at, and we need to say, okay, like, is that honest? Is it true? Or is it not true? And getting black and white about those things is important. the other thing that popped up with honesty is our ability to be honest with ourselves. To be able to do an honest assessment of ourselves, where we're at. It kind of flows back to that initial conversation. When you reached out, I had to step back and do an honest assessment of where am I at, and be really brutally honest with myself about what was working and what wasn't, and what I needed to tweak and change. And so that honesty piece takes a handful of different forms as we look at this. So number 6 is honor.
Samurai operated with the highest level of honor. They upheld their self-worth, and they lived by that highest code of conduct. Legend has it that if a samurai drew their sword, unsheathed it completely, they had to draw blood, even if it was their own. You have to acknowledge what your moral responsibilities are. Again, we come back to this introspective look. If I'm not adhering to all of these items or a code of conduct that I've established, how can I have honor? How can I have honor if I'm not living up to that? I have to have that for myself. I have to have that discipline. Honor myself in those situations, right? If I say I'm going to go to the gym every day, honor that code and go to the gym every day, regardless of how you feel. Right? Set your goals and have honor to be able to, and your self-worth to deliver upon those goals, whatever they happen to be. You're the only one. I mean, this comes back to all of these 8 principles really come introspectively again to us, right? And number 7 being loyalty. I have to stay true to myself first. If I'm not true to myself, then I can't be true to the outside world. Mindfulness, everything that we've talked about in 36 episodes on this really comes back to staying true to self. Fixing self first. I can do nothing if I don't fix myself, live by a code of conduct, live by a set of standards, uphold my moral character, have compassion for others around me, have respect for others' opinions, and be able to have a dialogue about what those opinions mean to them and what my opinions mean to me. And ultimately, number 8 is that self-control, which is wrapping it all up into a nice bow. We have to adhere to this code under all circumstances. Not only when we're with others, but when we're alone. When we're alone in our own heads, when we're alone in our own space, we still need to follow within that code of conduct and those principles for each other and for ourselves.
The interesting thing is when you figure out what your personal code is, right? What do you include on your own personal code? Yours might match this. You might add some things. Maybe there's something on here that you tweak a little bit, whatever that is, but adhering to that code is where this gets challenging. It's easy to look at the list and go, well, yeah, this is what I stand for. This is my code, right? It's not until you're in a moment where things get really uncomfortable, or you're in a moment of suffering, which is a word that got used a lot in that last episode. Like, what do you do when you're in a position of suffering, which is, it comes at all of us at different levels. That's where this gets tested. When it gets put into the fire, That's where it gets refined, it gets tested. A lot of the pollutants and the junk falls off, and you find out if you're really going to live the code that you said you were going to, or if it's just words on a piece of paper. When it's uncomfortable and the suffering kicks in, that's where your ability to carry yourself the way you said you wanted to gets really tested. So the interesting thing is too, these codes are not uncommon. The SEALs have their codes. The SEALs have their ethos. They have their code of conduct that they live by as a team. If you want to be a SEAL, here's the code of conduct that you've signed up for. Professional teams, NFL teams, or any team for that matter, they have code of conduct that you sign on to saying, if I'm going to be part of this team, this is how I'm going to show up. And a lot of this is defining what are the non-negotiables. At the end of the day, what's non-negotiable for me? Like, I can give here, I can give there, I can give here, but my code of conduct says I can't give in this area right here. I said this is who I was going to be.
To kind of tie into what you're saying, John, establishing that, but you can't do it just once, right? We can't just apply and stick to that principle just once. It has to be ongoing. And I saw this morning, this quote from Lou Correa. He's a strength and conditioning coach at Georgia Tech. He says, there's a reason you can't just run once and expect to stay in shape. You can't sweep the floor once and expect that floor to stay clean. You can't practice hard once and expect to win. You can't discipline your kids once and expect them to behave forever. You can't wake up early once and expect to stay ahead. You can't tell your family you love them once and expect that to be enough. What's the point? Once you make a commitment to consistency, accomplishing your goals will follow. Until then, once will never be enough. It takes practice. It takes practice. It takes doing it time and time and time again. You can't achieve your goals without putting in the work. You can't achieve your goals by putting up excuses day after day after day. Put the excuses aside. Have some compassion for yourself and for those around you. Have some respect for yourself and those around you, and go out there and achieve your goals. Repeatedly, through consistency.
That's so spot on. It's the small things over and over and over again. And I think as we wrap this episode, I think that's part of it is you need to figure out what those small things are. You need to figure out what your code is and start to write down, here's the code I want to live by. And you actually get out a piece of paper and a pen, spend some time with it, write down, this is what's going to define me. And then be thinking about, these are the small things I'm going to do over and over again to live that out. Based on my code, here's what I'm going to do consistently to make this a reality and go after the goals that I've set for myself.
And by all means, if you want to chat about it, shoot us a DM. Shoot us a DM. I'm happy to help.
Yeah. And go back. And if you haven't already listened to that episode with Ben and Carly, it's dynamite. The one we did with Chris right before that, more dynamite. As far as mindset, getting your head in the right space, both of those episodes have been phenomenal to create room for that and space to think about that. So go back, listen to those couple of episodes. Like we said, there's 35 episodes behind this one that will help you get positioned to become the person you want to be.
Awesome. Make it a great day and get after it.
See you later, man.
And that wraps it up for today's episode. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being part of the Grit Meets Growth tribe. And thanks for growing along with us and being part of this journey together. If you know someone who needs to hear the conversation we had today, please share it. If you got something out of this conversation, please leave us a review. And finally, if you want to make sure you don't miss future episodes, just remember to subscribe. We're thankful for each and every one of you. And as my co-host and good friend Chris Cathers always says, make it a great day.